Hello and welcome to the Persephone program. I am so excited because I have as my special guest today Letao Wang, a professional astrologist, tarot specialist, founder and spiritual counselor of the Healing Kingdom, author of two oracle decks, one of which I have in my hand, the Oracle of Celestial Deities. Love this. Speaking to us from Hong Kong, welcome, Letao.
Hi, hello, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me today. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you about your journey, how you practice Western astrology in
Mm, mm,
Hong Kong,
yeah.
where you came from, how you found it. I've
Mm,
heard a little bit, but will you tell our listeners how did you come to experience Western astrology, and
mm,
how did it sort of like what was your epiphany? How did this like spiritual opening happen for you?
right. So I actually grew up in a very traditional Chinese family, and my um childhood and my early days education had nothing to do with the mystical side of the world. My parents were very traditional. They're very much about you know academic excellence, to be honest. Just as you hear about all of these kind of stereotypical Chinese parents, right? What they are expecting from their children, what kind of university they're expecting their kids to go to. And my parents are not too far away from that stereotype, to be honest. And so my understanding about astrology, or the beginning, right, point of this whole journey really started late. I think I was already around the age of 23.
Hmm.
I encountered actually my first astrology teacher, and I was just a client. At that time, I was living in Sydney, Australia, to do my first master program, and it was just a coincidence that I met my first teacher there, and so he was really the first one opening this door for me, and so there I actually didn't really start with astrology because my first astrology teacher was more like a mythologist. And so that's where I learned, Iliad and Odyssey, right? Homer's, stories, and the classical Greek mythology and everything. And from there, I started astrology. Yeah.
Super interesting. I love that you opened your wonderful handbook, by the way, of the celestial deities with a quote by Joseph Campbell,
Yeah.
the famous mythologist that
Right.
I use a lot in my when I talk about astrology and I talk about readings. I do talk about them from an archetypal standpoint. What
Yeah.
what is the archetype and what does that
Mm,
represent? Because that
mm,
opens it up. And I
yeah.
love that you came into it through that rather than, a lot of people that are learning astrology today come in through a whole bunch of techniques,
Yeah. Yeah.
predictive techniques, looking at structure, so that it becomes more, I guess you could call it mathy,
Yeah.
and
Bookish. Yeah. It's
more
more bookish, right?
laborious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
100%.
it really it is many things,
Yeah.
astrology, but it is also this thing that you can sort of lean into and allow it as like a living archetypal energy, an energetic
Right.
force. The planets are energetic forces speak to you. So you
Yeah.
went that way, which is super cool. So you did this when you were 23. I'm thinking about what transits you may have had. So what year was that and what year were you born?
So I was born 1984,
Okay.
and
So
that was
2007?
2007. So yeah, 2007-ish. Yeah, 2007,
Okay.
2008 actually. Yeah. So I moved
Okay.
to Sydney, Australia, early 2008. So it was
Huh.
2008. Yeah. Mm.
So, okay. So Pluto was last stage
Mm.
Sagittarius, but
Uh-huh.
Jupiter, because this is a Jupiterian, don't you think?
Yeah,
Have you
yeah.
looked at your transits? Jupiter was also in Sagittarius, I believe.
And it was my second Jupiter return, right, at that time. And of course, at that time, I had no idea about, the planet transit, right? It was all,
Yeah.
too much for me at that time. But at that time, I mean, intuitively speaking, it was now, looking back, it was a very much, divinely guided, I feel, because I had no, knowledge or plans to find this path whatsoever. And it was just a very funny afternoon. I just walked into his shop, and he was asking me if I wanted to do a reading. And I was a poor student. I was doing my master program. I didn't even have a job. I didn't have a lot of money. So I could have just said, no, no, thanks, right? And I said, well, I have $20 if you want to do something short, right? And we did it. And it was amazing. And so, and I don't know, like a lot of the times, right, when you're not expecting certain things happening, and the universe will bring that right in front of you. And then later, when you look at your astrological chart and you realize that, okay, so that's what has been happening, right? And also, I think that year, perhaps I don't remember whether I think Jupiter was either transiting my seventh house or transiting my first house. I don't remember which, but it was like on a critical angle, yeah, around that period of time. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
Jupiter, I believe, was in Sagittarius that year.
uh-huh.
So,
Mm,
um, yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it's second Jupiter return, Jupiter in Sagittarius.
mm,
You must have that natally.
yeah.
Um,
A lot of
so,
really a lot of right, learning Jupiter's realm, right? Learning a higher knowledge.
mhm.
Also, I moved to a new country, so that was the international
Super
experience, right?
Jupiter.
Everything,
Yeah.
right? Everything
You
was
had all of
there
it.
actually, yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I was doing my master degree, so higher education was there.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. Huh.
It is. I mean, when I teach astrology too, I always guide people back to their first or second Jupiter return
Yeah.
and say, what was happening? What was opening up in your life? And there are so many connections
Huh.
that people can find and they are especially concerned with, mind expansion, travel, just
Yeah.
cultural opening,
Yeah.
sometimes religion or even mysticism.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I wanted to just tell you too, speaking of all of that, and I understand you're an intuitive as well, and that it opened your mythology, opened up
Mm,
your world, but you learned astrology, and then also you used the tarot or oracle
correct.
cards.
Yeah.
How did that
Correct.
happen?
Yeah. Tarot actually came later to me. I started, of course, I bought my first tarot deck quite early, but I never was able to connect with them.
Mm.
Funnily, right? I mean, 78 cards. I mean, I was looking at those images, and that was very difficult for me to really just get into it, very different from a lot of other tarot readers. And really everything started with myth. And so my understanding with in the mythology was really the foundation of everything that I do today. Reading, mythology, and also there are quite a few, right, famous astrologers in the U.S. Who are very much mythology prone. And one of my favorite ones is Liz Green.
Oh,
And she wrote
love
so
her.
many amazing books, right, based on the archetypes and the myth. And so that was really the foundation for me. And my first astrology teacher was also very mythology prone, right? He, even when I was studying astrology with him, he wouldn't just tell me to memorize these the planets and things like that. He would you know talk about the stories, and he would say, so regarding this planet, you know the stories about these deities and the nymphs and the heroes. So what do you think this means to you, right, based on your understanding of about the classical mythology? And so that was really the starting point. And I was just naturally very drawn to the Greek and the Roman mythology, to the point that after studying it for many, many years, I actually had this feeling that I have to go to Greece and Italy to really see what this is. Because you read these things in books, right? But you feel that I have to go to where it comes from. And so back in 2017, actually, so that was 8 years ago, for the first time, I went to Greece by myself. And I was so touched by, of course, when you ask a lot of people, about Greece, they go there for the island, right? The beaches, right? The beautiful, islands. Of course, I saw that too. But my favorite part during that trip was really Delphi.
I was just gonna say,
right?
did you go to the Oracle? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was the point, right? And I actually made it a very special day because that day was my birthday. So on my birthday in the morning, I got, I hired a driver basically, and I said I really need to see this, and he said, okay, let's go. So I spent the whole day there, just walking around, and that day was just blistering. It was so hot because I'm a Cancer, so I was born in midsummer. I was there, and I was almost crying, at the Oracle. I don't know why, and I just felt the energy so strongly. I was thinking, well, so this is a place where thousands of years ago, believe in it or not, right? Many, many heroes journeyed to this place, and they were consulting, asking questions to the Pythias, and hoping that they will be able to get the right answer from Apollo. And I was standing in front of the ruins. I was thinking, I wonder if Apollo can hear me now if I'm asking him a question. It's just a very, some people say, Letao, you're just living in your own imagination. You're living in this, you're so, because I'm a Cancer, right? And also, I have a lot of, I have my Jupiter and my Neptune in conjunction. So, whatever Jupiter touches expands it, right? So I've a lot of Neptunian in me. So that's myself completely submerged in my imagination when I was there. And that was just the most amazing experience that I've had, I think, in travels. And after that, every year, I would try to cut cost in other things, and I'll go to Greece. Either I go to Delphi, and I also went to other ancient ruins. I went to this amazing island called Samos,
Mhm.
where you find the ancient ruin of Hera, the goddess of sky and marriage. That was really spectacular. I also went to Delos. So it was a small island, just about 40 minutes a boat from Mykonos. And that's where the god of the sun and the moon, Artemis and Apollo, were born,
Mhm.
right? By Leto, their mother. And so when you are literally there and you really feel you're connected with the divine, you're connected with the myths, and you're connected with everything. And not to mention the stars, they are so clear and beautiful in the sky. And it was just almost like I was in a different world. Yeah. And so that was, sorry, I'm a little bit like off track now. Yeah.
No,
But
you're
I'm
not
just,
at all.
yeah.
No, are you kidding? I mean, this
Yeah.
is how I wanted to go because I
Yeah.
have to say that um, when I got your Oracle deck and I started reading it, firstly, as I mentioned, I was so surprised because I felt that you were very intimately connected with the archetype. And because, you know, I feel I am. And
Mm,
like I said, I grew up. One of my earliest children's book was Darier's, Greek and Roman,
yeah.
myths.
Yeah.
My mother was super, as my mother was an astrologer, and she was very much also about the Greek gods. I mean, I felt them so strongly in my entire life, and when I was reading your words, I was like, oh, he knows this because he's known it. So, I don't know how you feel about alternate lives and other dimensions, timelines, whatever, but I felt that you
Mm,
100% knew it and
mm.
also probably had a quote unquote, as we call it in the US, path life in Greece.
Yeah.
However way that really works, we're not sure. Time really isn't linear, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but I for sure like there's a reason why you feel this attraction.
yeah,
And to me, that was how I interpreted it. Like I was
yeah,
immediately my own intuition was like, oh, well,
yeah.
perhaps you were a
Absolutely.
teacher, perhaps you were an astrologer teacher in Greece in the Hellenistic time period, or who knows.
There were definitely some connection there, right? I mean, because I grew up in a very Chinese environment, right? And so, the stories that I heard was all about China. I mean, China has their own mythology, right? The Monkey King
Absolutely.
journey to the
It's so
West, right?
rich.
Right. It is, right? But, for the first time, I was 23, 24 years old when I, studied classical Greek mythology, it was a completely different feeling that I had. It was not just, I never felt that sense of sensation in my bones, right? So
Mhm.
that's why I said it was an eye-opening experience. And also studying Greek mythology really helped me to understand Chinese mythology better. And then later, when I was reading Chinese mythology again, and I had a much deeper understanding about what these stories are, and not just mythology, but also a lot of the ancient Chinese literature that we studied when we were younger in school, and now reading them again, it's kind of like this is what this is all about, right? So you have a lot of epiphany um, doing that. So I think Greek mythology was a little bit like that key for me. It's
It
complete,
was
just
like,
not right.
yeah, I mean, being that water sign, that with that incredible porous
Mm,
like sensitivity, that intuition,
mm,
yeah, I can see that you really connected to the archetypes through the Greco-Roman mythology, and now you were able to like translate that,
huh, yeah,
into the Chinese.
yeah, yeah.
And I really get that. And, again, like I mentioned earlier, I grew up in San Francisco, and
Mm,
my like best and oldest friend, like if I don't know if you've ever been to San Francisco, but it's pretty
once.
much about, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's like at least 50% Asian, mostly
yeah,
Chinese,
yeah, yeah.
and has been for a really, really, really long time. So,
Mm,
and I grew up celebrating the Lunar New Year every year,
mm,
celebrating Chinese astrology,
yeah.
absolutely, with like best friends in school.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody like, and these are people that, aren't fully Americanized. Like they're like
yeah,
100% like, if, second, third generation maybe, but
yeah,
still practicing all the customs. And
yeah,
I grew up with my mother who practiced the I Ching, pretty
yeah,
much every day, read the Tao Te Ching, read Lao Tzu, that was like
yeah.
the whole, and you're right. It is so much kind of more, I guess you'd call it like pragmatic.
Mm,
I found it to be like, I guess if we could use the Greco-Roman pantheon, the Chinese culturally are like more Saturnian, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's this
100%.
this
Yeah,
level of like control, restraint in order to create structures that last over time,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So even when so for the past about 2 to 3 years, I spend more time looking at Chinese astrology, right, and the I Ching and how those systems actually worked. Because I started with Western astrology, right, and a lot of people look at my website and they somehow maybe they're not reading it carefully, so they would assume that I do the Chinese 12 zodiac signs, right? Are you a rooster? Are you a dragon? They thought that was my expert because based on the way I look. And so I was thinking, okay, it's a part of my heritage anyway, so I should look into it. And it's very interesting that you said it. You mentioned there's this kind of like Saturnian energy in it, because I realized that Chinese astrology is very mathematical.
Mhm.
It's specifically, there is a very interesting system in Chinese fortune telling. It's called 奇门遁甲, and it's a little bit similar to the Western horary astrology. So it's a bit like, for example, if you lose your key and
Questions.
right, and you ask the sky, where is my key? I just lost it, right? Like, where can I find my key? And the Qimendunjia system, by doing the calculation, it will tell you which direction it is from where you are. And so if it's in the north, go to the room, the room that is in the north side of your house, or whatever that is. And I was thinking, well, this is really fascinating because it's useful, right? But it requires a lot of calculation in there. And well, there are archetypes there, right? Because there are the stars and you have to understand their energy. So there are archetypes there, but the difficult part about Chinese fortune telling is all calculation. And specifically, if you go to this very famous area in Hong Kong called Wang Xin, and it's famous for fortune tellers, right? So you're gonna see, the stalls, like on the two sides of the street, right? And they're all fortune readers and fortune tellers and astrologers, and everyone has a big chart in front of them, right? And it's a little bit different from Western astrology, because I feel the Western a natal chart, it's very, very visual. You see exactly where the planets are, right? Their angles, the aspects, and whether they're in conjunction, whatever the degrees. Chinese astrology, it's a little bit like an Excel sheet. So you know what I mean?
How
So
Chinese is that? Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
yeah, it's literally like an Excel sheet, right? So there are hundreds of thousands of words, right, on it. It's not visual, so you really have to know how to read the Excel sheet, right? and the meanings and how did they calculate this plus this minus this goes to that, right? So I find that very, very different. So I guess maybe personally I'm more connected with visual stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting too. And
Oh,
there's also a lot of geomancy
yeah,
oriented, like in Chinese astrology. It's like very much like about balancing, the Earth's
yeah, yeah.
energy, which is again like
Absolutely,
super
yeah.
Saturnian, right?
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
not necessarily talking about like broad archetypes.
Mm.
Um, but I think that's just so fascinating and cool because you're really bridging a lot of different worlds here,
Oh,
because I talk to a lot of clients, I do readings as well, and I know a little, I know a very, very basic Chinese astrology. I
yeah.
know that I'm a fire horse,
Mm, mm,
so,
mm, mm.
I understand the 12 animals and things like that, but couldn't do a chart like that.
Uh-huh, uh.
But I also know a little of Vedic astrology, sidereal
Yeah, yeah.
astrology too.
Mm,
So we've got
mm,
these three, like, you'd say that China and India have right now, in many ways, the two world's oldest cultures that are
mm.
long lasting. And when it comes
Yeah,
to, mythology, especially, and some of the spiritual techniques, they're
yeah.
certainly probably older than Western astrology, which is predominantly based on what we've put together, or the chart that we're looking at is pretty much codified, let's just say 2,500 years ago, 2,300 years ago, something like that, in Hellenistic
Mm, yeah,
Egypt.
yeah. Mm,
But certainly it has a longer history that's at least 5 to maybe even 10,000 years old, because we know that there are
yeah.
Paleolithic tools that celebrate the lunar cycle and stuff like that.
Mm, mm.
Um, But I think that right now the world is so connected that bringing in all of these different like viewpoints and cultures, like you said, learning some of the energies of the, let's just say Western, or,
Mm.
Greco-Roman
Yeah.
mythology, allows me to understand these. Because also when I teach astrology, I'll say, well, this planet, let's say Venus
Mm,
has many names, you
yeah.
know? You can call, Venus, or the feminine, maybe the moon archetype could be Kuan Yin, she could
Yeah,
be
yeah.
Selene, she could be, there's there's goddess names everywhere, and same thing with
Absolutely, yeah.
gods.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely, I mean, all these kind of different things, right? When you combine them together, you see the commonalities, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we're all a human, a human being living under the same sky, right? So there's a lot of similar inspirations that we receive from the above, as above, so below, right? That's what, this whole thing
Absolutely.
is about.
We're all
Um,
connected.
yeah, and not just about mythology. I think, what I did was, so I started with, when I was 23 with my astrology teacher, right? Studying, the mythology, astrology and everything. But then after I would say 4 or 5 years after I started to do this professionally. And what I really realized was that I wanted to do more than just making predictions and looking at someone's chart and telling them this is what they are or what their tendencies are. Because I realize a lot of clients who come to me, what they're truly looking for is they want therapy. So they go to right. I think you get that a lot probably. So I literally have got the tissue box, at the consultation room basically, and clients cry when they come
Yeah.
to me in person, right? And because there's a reason why they want to consult an astrologer or something, because they're experiencing certain hurdles or challenges, and they really need to talk to someone. And a lot of them feel deeply lonely inside, and which is very normal, right? I mean, we're all lonely sometimes. And so that's when I realized that what I really wanted to do is to bring that therapeutic value to the session. And so that's back in 2000, I think 18. I made the decision to actually go back to university to do my second master in counseling, because I wanted to do it professionally rather than just tell people I'm a therapist, but I have never received any training in therapy. Because sometimes people, there are people there challenging you. Oh, you say you're a therapist. What have you done? In this, have you studied it? Are you professional? Some people do
Right.
that, right? They
Yeah.
kind of like picky, right? Especially if they say, I'm paying you for this. And so that's what the interesting thing about that part is when I was back in grad school to do that degree, I realized a lot of the things my professors were teaching was already done pretty much in the session when I was doing the sessions, because there's a part of that, the modern psychology, their practice and their understanding and what their beliefs is very similar to what astrologers are already doing anyway. And so this is, going back to what you mentioned earlier about a lot of things are interconnected. And I think this is also the reason why Carl Jung was an astrologist and he was also a psychologist, because he was really the father of this, and how he connected, our deep psychological energy with the sky and with the stars. And I just really hope that our, let's say, the mental health, mental wellness industry would be able to embrace mythology, and they were able to embrace more astrology, be more open-minded, because I think that these two fields can work really well, really, really well, and they can benefit a lot of people. But it's just, sometimes we are not there yet. And I remember very clearly several years ago, I was working for a counseling agent, not really an agent, they're a company, but they do online, counseling therapist, right? And when I told them, about my background, they were very hesitant, because they were like, oh, we are, scientific, we are PhDs, right? And we don't want to associate with witchcraft. And I said, which part of my resume you see witchcraft? Like, what are you talking about, And so there's a lot of misunderstanding, I think. But the purpose of us, right, engaging with astrology and mythology is basically the same with the so-called, your PhD in psychology, whatever that is. We're trying to merge a lot of things together so that we can reach the purpose there to bring healing, therapy, and understanding to our human mind. So I just, my deepest hope in the future is I hope there will be one day that, the mental health industry can be more open-minded. And hopefully, some maybe amazing university will be open-minded enough to open, astrology courses for their students.
Absolutely. I mean, I everything you say, and I've said it many times myself too. I am finishing
Yeah,
up a program in applied Jungian
yeah,
psychology and
right.
therapy too. And Jung himself went through this same kind of struggle,
Yeah,
as you.
yeah,
And even with Freud, and it was a little bit of the
yeah,
disengaging of it
yeah.
was that as Richard Tarnas, have you read Richard Tarnas, Cosmos and Psyche?
Not yet, but it's on my
Yeah,
list.
he
Yes.
calls it the disenchantment of the
Mm,
world, right? Where
yeah,
they're
yeah,
saying that, it's the reductivist materialist thing that says that, like, oh, we're scientific, therefore there
mm,
is no soul or psyche,
yeah,
in what you're doing, when that's exactly what it is. It's a
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
psychic connection when you talk to someone's interiority into themselves, right?
I,
And astrology, Jung got his archetypes from that depth that he took into astrology, and then ended up, for PR reasons, having to kind of distance himself and create this
yeah,
whole thing. But
yeah,
even some of the psychological tests that we have now, like
yeah.
Meyer-Briggs and things like that, absolutely were inspired by Jung's archetypes. So there's that whole go back to astrology,
Yeah, yeah. I
um,
th I think
and
it's
it's
really
a
a
shortcut.
yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think by really understanding each other, then this can really work very well. I see, like, since we're talking about science and the myths, right? I see science related to Virgo and the myths related to Pisces. So they're really on the opposite side of on the chart, right? But I remember a very one of one of my favorite astrology teachers, right? Later, in my career that I encountered, he actually said to me, he said, to all those opposition signs, right, on the chart. He said, for example, to be a true Virgo, you really have to learn how to be a Pisces as well.
Absolutely.
Then you will be a Virgo. To be a true Aries, you have to really understand about Libra. So it's kind of like the yin and yang in the world, right? To be an amazing man, you have to understand women. Then that gives you actually more edge as a man. And to be an amazing woman, you also have to understand men, right? Vice versa. So I feel that for the so-called scientific research, right, in psychology versus, in mythology and astrology, is about we have to understand each other. You see, I think we are very open towards learning learning therapy, right, in a scientific way,
Mhm.
right? We are very open to the scientific research and the studies and doing degrees in those things. And I think it's time for them to also embrace a little bit our world as well.
Absolutely. Well, you told me you were a Cancer. I'm a Capricorn, born a double Capricorn, born on a full moon with a moon in Cancer. So I have that
What?
opposition.
Wait a minute. Did you say you're a sun Cancer, moon Cap? Sorry,
No, I'm a
sun.
Sun Capricorn, moon in Cancer.
Oh my God, we are opposite.
Ooh, so you're a full mooner too. So you were
Yeah,
born on the
I'm
full moon.
correct. Yeah, I'm a full moon in Capricorn. So my
Yeah.
sun. So
Wow.
yeah, so my sun is in Cancer, moon is in Capricorn. Yeah, and my full moon is a very, very tight full moon. It's almost,
Oh.
yeah, it's like less than 1 degree actually, the
Oh,
orb.
wow, that's really
Yeah,
tight. Yeah, mine
yeah, because
is like 7 degrees, so it's
seven,
a little
I
bit
see.
off. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
because
was
I
born
remember.
at dawn,
Uh,
like right after the few hours after. But
uh-huh.
well, very interesting.
Yeah. My mother
Um,
told me that, the night she was in hospital, right? Ready to give birth, and she was in labor and she saw the moon outside the window. She said it was so round. And I said, Mom, you know what? You didn't have to do that. I didn't like to be a full moon, Opposition is never an easy
I
aspect to deal
know. Well,
with, right?
same. Same. My mom told me that
Yeah.
too. She goes, the moon was full and we didn't think you were gonna come, but you came. And
Yeah. Meant to
super
be.
interesting.
Yeah.
What's your rising sign?
I'm a Virgo rising, actually. Yeah.
Virgo rising. Great.
Virgo. Yeah.
That's
So
perfect for
yeah.
that analytical, and therapeutic, and I
Uh-huh.
would also say studious because you have
Yeah,
many
yeah.
degrees.
Uh-huh.
Excellent. But I guess I just like back to, okay, well, we definitely need to talk again.
Mm,
Um, and I think that, like I said, I am just I have to say that, to all my listeners too, you guys need to get this deck, The Oracle of Celestial Deities. You will love it. A lot of folks also, like you had said earlier, don't always connect with the tarot. It
mm,
is its own thing, right? Let's just say
yeah.
that much. But now we have this wonderful renaissance, if you
Yeah.
will. There's a renaissance of ancient learning being revealing itself to us. There was a renaissance of that ancient learning, which I think
Yeah.
you're for sure a part of, Letao. And I also think there's a renaissance of empowerment where everybody can find these tools for self-awareness and
Yeah.
also for connection.
Yeah.
Because even though we do live in just in general, in a time period in which there is this kind of like materialist reductiveness, kind of vibe,
Yeah.
there is also this movement,
Yeah.
and this movement is saying, guess what? There's energy behind all these things. There
Mm,
is energy behind everything.
yeah.
I mean, quantum physics already pretty much can also potentially describe, let's just say, the mechanism
Yeah.
potentially of
Yeah.
astrology and
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
divination.
Yeah.
But regardless, this is a great oracle deck. People have the opportunity to use it in a really easy way
Mm,
and just dive into it.
yeah. Yeah.
So I pulled two cards. I don't know if you can see because I put my little blur on, but I pulled
Yeah.
Saturn for our
Saturn.
conversation today and Eros,
Yeah. Love these two. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe if I was younger, then we could like be in a romantic relationship or something. But
That would be really interesting, right? So
I'm just joking.
yeah,
But it was really cool. And the definitions were wonderful.
yeah. The Saturn parties are, is the serious part, right? So
The
when we
seriousness.
dive in, right, when we delve into the serious discussions about the myth and the mythology and what's happening actually right now in the world, and the Eros part is the fun part,
The fun
right? The
part.
fun part, right? And the I always see Eros as the energy of sort of like networking energy, because Eros is an angel who shoots arrows, right? And so he will want to make people fall in love. This is about making connections there.
Right.
And
There's a
but
spark.
but
There's a connection. Yeah.
yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So we have probably like maybe like
Mm,
15, 20 more minutes. You mentioned what's going on in the world right now.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. What are your just intuition off the top of your head? How are you feeling? We just had this Mars Uranus, conjunction last weekend that
Mm,
was,
mm.
happened to be at the same degree as Algol. And I think you do use the fixed stars in your astrology. And of course, as you know, our would be presidential candidate, Donald
Oh,
Trump,
yeah, yeah.
was shot.
Child, yeah,
There's so much chaos. The United States is having its Pluto return, so
yeah.
much going on. Just from your standpoint, what are you feeling and thinking about the world? What are you thinking about
Mm,
this time? What are you thinking about? What are
yeah.
your intuitions?
So I'm just looking at the transit now. Yeah, it's on the phone here. Yeah, I believe we
Hmm.
use the same software, right? Astrogold. So when we enter this year, right, 2024, a lot of people were really, really saying that, oh, this is a year of dragon, right? And of course, in Chinese culture, dragon is supposed to be extremely auspicious and, all that kind of stuff. But when you look at it from an Western astrological perspective, what I really feel about this year is more about something that is yet to develop itself, if you know what I mean. And I really feel that next year we're going to see a lot of the new things happening, starting, because next year we're going to see all the major planets in the sky entering new signs, right? All the
Zero
outer planets
degrees. Ay,
completely, right? Everything's
wild.
moving to new signs. So this is sort of like that renewed energy into the future. But this year, it's a bit like something is yet to be born, but it's kind of stuck in there, right? It's waiting, right? This Pluto also retrograde back into Capricorn, so relearn the past lessons, right? And then back to Aquarius again. Then finally Pluto will stay in Aquarius for the next 10 to 15 years or whatever, how long that is. And I feel that this year it's a lot of lessons for us to learn and to look at into our history and the past a bit. Okay, before all these planets move into a new sign for this renewed perspective, what have we learned? And specifically, I do feel that from now until the end of the year, when Saturn is in retrograde
Mhm,
in Pisces, I just had this very clear feeling that this is not going to be an easy retrograde
mhm,
for Saturn, right? And so
mhm.
when specifically for the next several months, I think there's a lot of lessons that we need to learn at a societal level. And of course, there are also individuals lessons as well. And also one more thing I want to mention is yesterday I did a collaboration video with an amazing tarot reader on YouTube, and we were looking at the full moon in Capricorn, the second one actually happening this Sunday. And
Mhm,
this full moon in Capricorn is at 29 degrees in
mhm.
Capricorn, right? So it's like at a very critical, energetic degree
Yep.
there. And so what does that, mean, right? Again, ending completion, a sense of crisis, but also this full moon is having a very tight conjunction with Pluto.
Yep.
Again, transformation, ending, completion. And so I do feel that from now until the end of this year, we're going to see a lot of interesting events happening in our human society, and it's really prompting us to have this realization about what we're ready to release and what we're ready to begin. So it's kind of like bridging this year and the next
Yep.
year before everything moves into a new science.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Fully agree with that. Yeah, this full moon isn't easy. It is conjunct Pluto, and it's at that 29 degrees. And of course, Pluto will then in September be retrograding back into Capricorn
Uh-huh.
at 29 degrees of Capricorn, that aneretic, that critical degree. And then
Yeah. Mm.
um, moving back, fortunately, a couple weeks in November to direct, and
Yeah.
then moving to that 0 degrees of Aquarius. And then we'll have Saturn and
Mm.
moving to Aries and also Uranus moving to Gemini next year.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
and all these 0 degrees, and it's like this I really feel like it's just like this brave new world coming up,
Yeah.
and it's just staying centered is so important. But I love hearing your perspective because you're not like sitting here in the battle, you're not.
Yeah. Yeah,
You're a little removed, but
but I do feel that the sky is helping us in some way anyway, right? So for example, earlier
yeah,
you mentioned the Mars and Uranus conjunction. I mean, it's definitely not an easy thing, right? But if we can channel this energy very well, this is about how we break through from the convention, right?
for
You
sure.
know, right? And what is also interesting is they're forming a trine with Pluto, right? Mars trine Pluto is very intense.
Yeah,
I like trying. Everyone likes trying, right? Just
yeah,
easy and smooth, right? So Mars and Pluto is almost like, we are able to bring out the best part of these two planets, right? Our power, in how we want to transform things. And Uranus is that genius idea, right? The revolution.
yeah.
And I think that we can utilize this energy to help
Mm.
us move forward. Yeah, with either it's about our government structure or society, or maybe even in conflict. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
Sometimes, that's how you create change.
mm,
It certainly has been in history. And
yeah.
yeah, well, we're going to have that Mars retrograde this year. This is a Mars retrograde year. So at the end of the year, we'll have that. And
Yeah.
that's pretty intense. So I feel like it's not going to be this new birthing of this new world.
Mm,
Um, but as much I when I look back at the past for us in the United States, certainly since like 2001, really,
mm,
when we
mm,
had a Saturn Pluto opposition, and
mm,
then in 2013 time period ish, we had that Uranus Pluto square, and then we had
mm,
the Saturn Pluto conjunction in 2020. The whole world,
mm,
we these are really challenging, and Saturn and Pluto are not going to be doing this dance, and Uranus and Pluto are not going to be doing the the difficult
yeah.
relationship dance.
Yeah.
There's more sextiles and trines, like you
Mm,
were mentioning the Mars trine, in our future. So I have hope, no matter
mm,
what. I do think that the stars and the planets are ultimately teachers for our personal evolution, and that we can
yeah.
use them
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's be yeah, we have to be positive about
Yes, we
this, right?
do. Yes,
Yeah.
we do,
Yeah.
because that's what, we're cultivating,
Yeah.
it's pragmatic.
Yeah.
I love, like, I'm
Absolutely.
thinking,
Yeah.
like, the I Ching, the wise man knows when to, proceed and when to step back. It's about,
Mm,
like, really understanding what we've been given. And
yeah.
astrology, these are tools. These archetypes are
Mm,
tools, and the archetypes, the myths, the
yeah.
heroes, the celestial deities are living energetic forces that we
Yeah.
can connect to, which you have
100%.
done
Yeah.
so well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure. Okay, I want to tell people how
Mm,
to find you,
okay.
and also, where can we find your oracle decks?
Okay. So the Oracle decks are released on Amazon already. So if
Okay,
you can
great.
just type Oracle of the Celestial Deities. The first deck is called Oracle of the Mythic Heroes, which I talked about the 40 different archetypes based on the human stories and the heroes and heroines from classical mythology. So both these two decks can be found on Amazon, or you can also if you go on my website, thehealingkingdom.com, you will be able to find the links to purchase them as well. Yeah. I also
Great.
have
And
a very yeah, I also have a very active Instagram account. Yeah, are we connected on Instagram yet?
I will make sure we are. I think that
Oh,
I
okay.
did. I'll double check. Yeah.
Okay, sure. I'll check later. Yeah. Okay. So my Instagram account is dedicated to astrology, tarot, and also things related to mythology as well. My travel. So it's the name is very simple, just my name. At Letao Wang, LetaoWang.
Perfect. And I'll put it in my show notes so everybody
Thank you.
knows.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for having me. Yeah.
It was such a
Awesome.
pleasure. And I would love to talk to you again.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
can
We
talk
should do
about
yeah,
whatever.
another absolutely. Yeah. Maybe even, let's say towards the end of this year, maybe we can do
Yeah,
a podcast about, 2020, 25,
for sure.
and yeah, give our audience something to look forward to. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely.
mm.
We're going to be doing it. Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
my little, yes, obviously we're connected. We're both full mooners in our opposite signs. So like that axis, that like we're together,
Yeah,
we can learn from each other and connect.
100%.
And,
Yeah. Look
um,
forward to it. Look forward to it.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so nice to meet you. Love your deck. You guys go get his deck. It's fantastic. Check him out on Instagram and also his website, thehealingkingdom.com. Letao, it was a true pleasure. I cannot believe that already like almost an hour has passed. Um,
Yeah,
we
time
could talk
flies. Yeah.
forever. We could talk
Yeah, yeah.
forever.
Yeah. Thank you
But
so
I hope
much.
to
Yeah.
talk to you again. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Likewise. Yeah. Have a wonderful day. Yeah.
Okay,
Talk to
you
you soon.
too.